Greetings and welcome to a presentation of the Adrian Dominican Sisters, A Sister Story. I am Sister Peg O'Flynn, and today we're going to have a conversation with our Sister Jane Zimmerman, who presently resides and is in ministry in Chicago. So Jane, welcome. Thank you for your willingness to share your story with us. And perhaps we could just begin with where you began. So tell us a bit about your family and your relationships, and then just go on with however you want to. And then I'll interject, at times if we want to go deeper, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, so it's all yours, Jane.
Thanks, Peg. Gosh, I was born in Boston, Massachusetts.
Ooh.
And my mother lived there for many years in East Boston. I was born in 1943, and Mom and Dad met when Dad was on leave from the Navy. And so he would come into Boston Harbor and they would meet. In fact, they met at a typing class in Boston. And so that's how it all began there. And I believe I was 2 when we moved to Gary, Indiana, my dad's home. And, that was kind of a hard thing for Mom as she spoke through the years. Boston, of course, was the hub of culture and et cetera.
Right. Uh-huh.
Why leave and so on. But and it was 1945. And, I did not know my dad until the war was over. Certainly I got to know him, certainly.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But then we resided in Gary, till I was about 10. Dad had worked at Sears, and he got transferred then to Hollywood, Florida, or to Florida, where he also worked with Sears. And so in Gary, I attended school with the Poor Handmaid Sisters, and then in Hollywood, of course, with the Adrians at
Hollywood
School.
Hollywood,
Florida.
where? Florida.
Yeah.
Well, that's right.
Yeah. And Mary Tardif and I were in the same class.
Okay, dear Mary. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we were good friends for years. And so those were good years, all of them. I feel I had a wonderful childhood. I, always had good friends on the block and wherever.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I'm the oldest of 4.
Okay.
My sister and brother-in-law live in Bardstown, Kentucky. And then after my sister comes Paul, who is deceased, lived in Davie, Florida, west of Fort Lauderdale.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then after him came John, my youngest brother, who was born my first year on mission.
Oh my.
In 1960. And so he and Mary, his wife, live in Orlando. So I still have connections with Florida. And
I was going to say, I hope you go visit him.
oh, indeed.
This time of the year. Exactly.
What time of year to do that? Yeah, for sure. That's for sure. So grade school was with our sisters. Gosh, I had, the names of the nuns who come to me. Well, an early one was Sister John Claire Lux.
Right.
She died around 54 or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At the age of 28. And I remember helping her in her classroom, set it up for school to start and so forth. But she was the first time I encountered death because she was laid out in our church and so forth. And before she was brought to Adrian. But I received quite a few of her things when I entered, which was kind of nice.
Yes.
Other nuns were Rosaire Marie,
right.
Marie Joseph Berry, I had to sit in the front desk because I was naughty in her class. But
Many of us from Florida, you know, knew some of those situations.
sure, Sister Andrew Irene, I forget her
Uh-huh.
baptismal name. And Virginia Hafey Wells taught music. We loved her. And she got transferred in the middle of our year. She was our homeroom teacher in 7th grade, I remember, and got transferred to Nassau. Oh, she had a big message on the blackboard, and oh, we were heartbroken.
Did she get transferred like in the middle of the year?
Yeah, somewhere like around Christmas time or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, those were good memories, you know, of my grade school years in Hollywood in particular. And then I went to, Mary Tardif and I went to St. Joseph Academy. We were thinking about religious life, the two of us. And we thought if we went to the academy, we would know what religious life was like. And
did someone in particular kind of put that thought in your mind, or that just came about yourself?
well, you know, we talked about it. Sister Catherine Deutsch was principal
Yes.
and superior down there, and I think she might have been instrumental. I just remember her. Well, she was my sponsor, so. But I do remember being, you know, knowing that, you know, there was something special. The two of us, Mary Tardif and I, would go to the convent, and I think that may have been where our vocation kind of got nurtured. We would go over, the nuns lived about a half mile from the school. And so we would go over and help them with their laundry, put it on the line and take it off the line, and maybe do some ironing with
Oh, that's great.
the gimps and
Oh, yeah.
and whatever, and did some chores around their convent and so on. So it may have been just from, you know, knowing them and just kind of being knowing them in a different way from the classroom.
Mhm.
And seeing their joy and their, you know, interaction with one another was a good thing to see for us.
And you know what's interesting now, Jane? That's exactly with women that are coming and seeing the congregation. It's important that they come and they're on campus and that they're interacting with our women, because many of them just
Sure.
heard about us on the computer or something.
Well, that's right, you know, and I, you know, I believe that's probably where the seed was planted.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, yeah, and so I entered early, and so did Mary Tardif.
So you were preps?
No, they had discontinued the prep
Okay.
school the year before we entered. I
Mhm.
entered in 58, September of 58. And Mary Tardif had entered the previous summer. So we entered in sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
And that was not unknown at that time. And, you know, through the years, you know, people have asked, gosh, do you ever regret doing that? You know, so you're so young and blah, blah, blah. Actually, you know, it continues to be the right thing. And
Right.
I know it is. I mean, you know it in your bones.
You do, yes. That's why it's called a call. You didn't get called. You didn't get called. You were called. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, my first mission was Calumet City here in Illinois. Sister Agnes Edward was the superior at the time. So I got initiated into teaching. I had wonderful mentors. Sister Catherine Patrick was, you know, she sat down with me and showed me how to write lesson plans, that whole bit. So I was there about 3 years or so, and then went to St. Rita. And Sister Helen Thomas was the principal and superior. I loved her. She was a mentor to me, I think, in many ways. There was something just very genuine about her, and she was very sensitive to all of us, and loving and kind, and you know, just I remember that about her. I taught for 28 years in the Chicago area.
And you know what's important? I neglected to say this at the beginning. So when you entered, we changed our names at reception.
That's
So,
right.
and you were Sister Marie Eucharia.
That's right.
Can you tell us how you got that and then go back to what you were talking about?
I had a devotion to the Eucharist.
Good. Okay, that's what I figured.
From an early age, I went to daily mass in Hollywood before school began. And I remember Mary Tardif and I kneeling at the statue of the little flower in the vestibule of the church at that time and praying for our vocations. And, but yeah, it was devotion to the Eucharist.
Okay.
Right.
Because there are people that are watching this and they probably don't know Jane Zimmerman because they knew you as Sister Marie Eucharia.
That could well be.
Yeah, that's why we want to make sure we can, if you've had another name, yeah.
I remember a first grader writing my name phonetically on something, and he had written YOU-CAR-IA.
Oh, yeah.
No, I had to smile, but
That's
yeah,
cute.
I remember that. So, yeah, so I taught for 28 years in the Chicago area. And
yeah,
then,
I see that. You know, they say enter the convent and see the world. You sure didn't. You kind of stayed in Chicago besides that little stint in Adrian.
oh yeah, I did. And then I got I think it was a phone call. We didn't have email then, from Nadine Foley, Sister Nadine. She had heard that I had this TV studio where in our school at the time. This was in the late 80s. I was at St. Denis at the time, and we had a TV studio with a reel-to-reel 1-inch videotape recorder. It was huge. And 2 cameras, and they were big too, on tripods. And we had a weather vane and a weather map and so forth. And I had a news program with these 7th and 8th graders and so forth.
Wonderful.
And we did the weather, invited the weatherman from the local channel and all that. But yeah, and it was fun. And I had a photography club, and I built a dark room down in our basement at the convent. And so I had some 8th graders who were interested, and we made our own cameras and all of that. So Nadine called me and said, Jane, I hear you do some videotaping and so forth. Well, yes, I do with grade school children. Would I consider coming to Adrian and working with videotaping there? Ooh, well, let me think about this. And so, and I had been at St. Denis for about 11 years. And I did get back to her and said, yeah, I think I do need a change. And so I'll come to Adrian, and I spent 6 years there.
So you started that whole thing was started, which is now our communication department. You kind of birthed it. Interesting.
Yeah, and Sister Lois Spear was head of the communications office when I first went there, and she wanted to, get more involved in video because it was becoming more of a thing. And she said, now after a year, I'm going to resign. And so I go, and, so at any rate, she did. And the next year was 1989, and we had a convening of the whole. And of course, I was in charge of all of that. And somewhere during that time, and it worked out okay, thank God. But somewhere during that time, I got to meet our new communications director, who was Sister Lorraine Wesolowski, Franciscan sister.
Right.
Of Millville. And from then on, we had, I had the dark room there and Adrian, and, it was specifically built for my own needs. And
That was in Daypro Hall, wasn't it?
it
Or was
was initially, and then they renovated the upstairs
Yeah.
on second floor or third
Yeah.
floor. No. And the new dark room was built according to my specifications, and also I had a room specifically for the video equipment and so forth. So yeah, and so I worked in the dark room. I developed pictures. I did proofreading. I interviewed people for the In Between, which was our
Right.
our in-house magazine. So yeah.
Well,
Those-
then now we have to move along here a little bit
All right.
because there's another, change of venue with you.
Mhm.
So you started into spiritual direction. But one thing I remember when I visited Center Point to have to do a workshop, not have to do, I was invited to do a workshop there. And you were with Ellen Murphy
That's right.
and
Ellen Murphy and Peter Anthony.
Peter
Yeah.
Anthony, yes. And I tell you, you were all just so hospitable. I think you helped me learn how to, be so always present and hospitable at Weber Center, because you were good mentors for me. I will always
thank
remember
you.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that was a good experience. I attended in 94, 95, a 9-month program in spiritual direction training here in the city. And those months were life-changing for me, they just, because you really have to get inside yourself and know who you really are and so forth. But then after that, we began Center Point, and that was wonderful.
Yes, it was hard.
I think it was about 3 years we had it, and then for some reason we had to let it go. And that was a tough time to let it go because we didn't want to. But at any rate, then I continued in the spiritual direction field, and I continue today. I have a handful of people for spiritual direction, and
Wonderful.
just so
Wonderful.
such a privilege.
To be with people at such a significant time for them. So you certainly have been gifted and certainly have given freely of your gifts. Is there anything that, like a challenging time that you could share with us that you may have had, or something you learned about yourself in a challenging time? Or how do you get through challenging times?
I think that challenging times, well, Center Point was, but
Yes.
I know that there was a time when my brother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and that was really hard on our family and all of us, and just that was a real hard time. That was in I think the mid-70s that happened, and then it just continued through the years, and it just was. It was a tough thing to understand, at the time. And although I connected often with my brother, Paul. I suppose too, I'm just trying to think, well, certainly, that I live with Sister Cyrilla Zarek.
I certainly, and that's something else. I stayed at your house one time. Very hospitable women, very. I was always trying to figure another way to get back there. And then when dear Cyrilla came to campus, I wanted to have her do her story, but she wasn't well enough at the time.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, we lived together for 20 plus years. In the upstairs part of our house.
Yes,
there were 4 of us in the house.
Right,
and,
right near the midway.
Yes. And when she died, that was about 5 months ago now. That was really tough. and, you know, I dealt with it. I made a great retreat in August, the end of August. And that helped me a lot, move through that emptiness. And, you know, what helped me too was just recently I read an article in the occasional papers, LCWR, and there was somebody there in one of the articles who lost a good friend too.
Right. Uh-huh.
She mentioned something about seeing her counselor, and her counselor said, "Oh yeah, I know what you're experiencing." She said, "You know, this uninvited, this unchosen
Right.
thing of spaciousness." And so what she did was turn that emptiness thing around to that word, spaciousness. So I'm staying with that, and you know, that is opening something for me that I don't know yet, but it's good.
Good. Good. What do you do for fun?
Oh gosh, I do. You know, I bake. I love to
Oh, good.
cook.
Oh, good. And you
Yeah.
probably live alone.
Even alone, I do. You know.
That's not right to have a good cook with. You could do Meals on Wheels.
Yeah, sure. I love to go to the different parks.
Okay.
And, you know, just kind of walk around them. And I go fishing when I'm able, you know, when
Very quiet.
the
Very
weather is
reflective, yeah.
good, and I enjoy that very much. I've fished all my life, so.
That's
And I like to
wonderful.
go to, you know, if maybe once a year I'll go to a play or a concert or something. Certainly enjoy things like that.
Where do you think the spirit might be leading you at this time or inspiring you at this time?
Well, I come back to that place of spaciousness.
Good.
I'm living alone for the first time in my life, in this apartment in Chicago. And it's inviting me to explore that whole idea of spaciousness
Mhm.
and also spaciousness within. And so that is, it's something that's taking root and ongoing in me right now. And I can't put a finger on exactly it yet, because I'm still exploring it.
Mhm. So if I asked you what brings joy to your heart, maybe you're still in the process of that because you've.
Well, what brings joy to my heart is always friendship and people.
Mhm.
I also belong to I'm part of the Immigration and Refugee
Oh,
Committee at
wonderful.
our church at Old St. Pat's downtown. And
You belong, wait a minute, you belong to that church?
I do.
Yes. You know what? When the pandemic first started, I remember someone told me to watch that, and I always saw you in church. You were up in the front. You were up in the front. I said to Pat, I think that's Jane Zimmerman there. If ever I get to Chicago, I want to visit that church on a Sunday. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, there are over 200 zip codes that go to that church.
200 what?
Zip codes.
Zip codes. Got it. Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah. So at any rate, I'm on this committee, and we just recently collected 5 setups for 5 apartments for the coming year for incoming asylum seekers.
Wonderful.
So that's exciting. That gives me joy. And we go and we set up, we clean the apartment, we set it up and so forth when one becomes available. And then people have donated new sheets, new towels, new silverware, all this stuff. And so we set up the apartment, do the shopping or whatever it may entail. And that's been really exciting.
What a gift that is. Oh my
It
word.
really is. And to belong to a parish that's really doing that, you know.
That parish seems unusual.
It is.
Yeah. You just want to be there.
That's right.
The singing is magnificent.
It is. And the cooking is too.
And the who?
the preaching.
Right. So is there anything else as we try to wind this up that you want to share with us? Anything significant? Everything has been very significant. And I know we couldn't go into great detail,
Oh,
but
sure. I'm reminded of Dermot O'Murku, who
yes.
he gave a presentation at Weber during the pandemic, and I copied something down that he said. He said, I am at all times the sum of my relationships, and that is what confers my identity and makes me unique.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe, every experience and relationship has been a stepping stone for me to becoming who I am, who I'm called to be. I've been so blessed with so many circumstances and
Right.
and so many people, and I'm just grateful for all of it, and because it's been a way, and it continues to enable me just to be the person I am.
Mm-hmm.
And continue to be. So I'm grateful for it all.
Thank you. And, you told us a little bit, we cannot get Mary Tarter's history, but you certainly shared part of her life with us too, which is a blessing. And also the women that you stood on their shoulders, the women in Lauderdale. Yeah, you've lived with some great women and some great women. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you've been a great woman with some people. So I thank you. And I know I have been a better person for having crossed paths with you on several occasions in my life. And very welcoming, very hospitable. And I'm glad that you're in the spiritual direction and that it's just something you can always treasure and help us with, be with us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Very much. So thank you, Jane Zimmerman, Marie Eucharia,